and honor to introduce our speaker. I just met him, so I'm looking forward to learning more about Jimmy R. from Savannah, Georgia, with his southern drawl. He looks like a character, and he brings quite a following here, so gotta be good. So come on, bring it, Jimmy. Thank you.
Recording in progress.
How much time do I got? Just so I can set my own.
Till the top of the hour.
Till the top of the hour. Okay, I'm going to set 45 minutes. That'll just be good. Hey, y'all, my name is Jimmy, and I am a grateful, recovered alcoholic, and the world is a better place because of that. I like that you guys read about, our first promise in the book where it says that, we are 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless disease, and to show people precisely how we did that. It's not that recovery is not happening, it's that we've been recovered from that seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. I am not cured of this thing. If I put another one in, it's not going to happen. But I don't have that desire to do that anymore. I don't have that. So I like to start all my talks with a prayer. So if you guys will indulge me with a little moment of silence to acknowledge God's presence in the room, and then I will follow it by the set-aside prayer. God, we invite you into this room to guide and direct each of us as we seek your truth. Father, Sky Daddy, Sky Mama, Krishna, Atman, Buddha, Jesus, Allah, Brahman, High Finance, capital F, Friend, Boss Universal, Creative Intelligence of the Universe, Star of the Heavens, Great Mystery, capital R, Reason, the space between Sky Diddly Doo, Dorothy, and your little dog too. Whatever mouth noise you adhere to or really grinds your gears, please set aside within each of us that which would block us off from the truth. Lay aside our prejudice about what we think we know about this process, how I process, how you process this meeting, any other meeting, conference approved, or really in your groove, translation or transition, or our ego's interpretation of a spiritual condition. Remove our fears, Lord, that we may hear your truth through the members of this group. Give us the strength and courage to share your truth with each other in a real spirit of love and compassion for our fellow man, orths and squares. Amen. Thank you all so much. That's more for me than for anybody else, but I have to get myself out of the way. I have to set all the things that I know about speaking in an AA meeting. Coming to Mississippi, I was just in Mississippi on my way over here. I came back from Tucson. Tucson's got some really great recovery. I went and stayed in Flowood and had a tornado while I'm doing a meeting and just blacked out. I can still see myself on the meeting, but I was right there in y'all's neighborhood doing some AA. So my home group is any group that I'm in. I was in a group this morning, Savannah Sunrise, which is one of my home groups. I got to speak there this morning. I was a super secret speaker, and I didn't even know it. I just got thrown right into the mix and had to throw down. I didn't have this prayer with me, and I ad-libbed, and some girl asked me if I could give her that prayer, and I said, unless you wrote it down, sweetheart, I can't give it to you. I can give you something close to it, but so I've been doing, I ran into y'all in 1987, into Alcoholics Anonymous, minor intox. All that means is I'm just not old enough to drink, right? I come in here, I go to a church basement. Yeah, y'all dress funny, you smell like cigarettes and coffee, and you want to touch too much, and then you pass this 12 steps across to me. It doesn't look like a spiritual contract to me. Like, I don't need any of this. This don't look like God to me. That's fine for y'all. Y'all can have it, stay in y'all little basement and stuff. But, I'm thinking it's just wrong place, wrong time. It's bad luck. Obviously I'm not old enough to drink yet. And so, they're just going to have me go talk to a few people. We're going to do that for a little bit. That would have been a sweet sobriety date. I've been 30 something years, I'm an old timer now, but I'm not an old timer now. I'm a long timer because I kept running into alcoholics. The thing is, if you keep running into alcoholics, you might want to open this book, because the answers are in the book. It's not going to the meetings. It's not signing the pieces of paper. I was smart enough. The main problem centers in the mind, to forge the names on the pieces of paper, because I knew this was an anonymous program and the judge wasn't going to call these people. So, I was getting through, these different times that the God rails would come up and kind of bump me until the bumps got a little bit harder. It'll knock you around for a little bit. trying to put you on the path, but I don't think that God's will and my will are lining up. I understand there might be a God, but he's just running parallel with me while I'm doing my own stuff over here. He's not really paying me too much mind, and I haven't really studied that much about God. Everything I knew about God I learned from TV, and that's not a very good place to learn anything about God. I had other people's opinions of what God was. That's not a good idea. Like, I get bristle with antagonism when somebody brings up the word God, but if you spell it dog, I'm like, look at there. But when you put those three letters in a different order, I'm like, oh no, yeah, you're not making me a Southern Baptist. This is not happening right now. This is not going to happen. I ain't going to have the fever running through me. I ain't going to get up and dance or do anything like that. And I thought you guys were religious programs. But, I ran into my then wife in 1999 when I was, dealing in outside issues and stuff. I always had these vacation homes, that aside from alcohol was always the main house, but I had these vacation homes like MA, we'll say that's Maryland. We'll say CAS, California. We'll say MDMA is a state that we don't even know about. We'll say K is Kentucky. But I could go to those when the heat got too much on the house alcohol, and I could go there for a little bit. So my drinking career was like Tom Brady's. I could take that thing longer than anybody else's and kind of be successful at doing it. These outside issues. I met my wife buying some outside issues. I don't know why that marriage didn't work out. That seems like that's a fairy book. A fairy tale, ending, beginning, the golden slipper. I'm going to smash your foot in there and we're going to get this thing right, So in 1999, I got married, had a couple of kids and stuff. And in 2003, my wife didn't like that I was using some prescription drugs. And so I had gotten into a program in 2003, had gotten into a sister program of this and was sober for about 7 years. And then I got pigeons. I'm running people through the steps. I could share real good. I went to conferences. I went to all this stuff and as I was going one way, she was going the other way. We were passing each other in the hall, and in 2009, I went up to Canada to Southern Ontario to a CA convention. And I ran into this guy from Iowa, a Norwegian farmer that looked like a cowboy to me. He sat down right next to me. I thought he didn't want to get his wallet stolen. And I had no idea who that was. That guy sat there. I was a little bit scared, but I kind of felt pretty good. He sat down next to me. He was asking me how the conference was, how I was like. He just saw that I was scared and he wanted to warm me up. He walks up on stage and gives a keynote speak and just blows me away. I'd never heard anybody talk about God in that way. And that CD kept me sober through the War of the Roses for a year, listening to that CD over and over. I had never heard anybody talk about God that way. What I had gotten into when I was in the program in the 7 years of my prior sobriety, which I didn't think even meant anything at that point. Once I went back out, somebody told me this wonderful line. It said, drinking wasn't your problem. And I was like, aha. You are absolutely correct. After being through the War of the Roses, having all this weight, life was getting heavy. I was making heavy going of life. And somebody told me that one magical line that drinking wasn't my problem. And I went and I took that sip, looked around, no lightning hit me. The monocle went in, the top hat went on, and I was like, Mr. Monopoly, I'm drinking again. There's women around and stuff like this. But the hill gets really steep. As you quit that stuff, that long period of sobriety does not mean that you can drink again after a while. We learned that, through the car salesman, Jim's story in here, and the guy who, or the man of 30, I guess it is, that decided to pull out his carpet slippers again. I didn't have any carpet slippers. I got rid of all my carpet slippers. There's not any in my Amazon gift basket or anything like that. I have no thresholds. I took them all out of the house. I always put clouds on the horizon. I have them on my windshield, so that there's always a cloud on the horizon, so I don't have to deal with any of that stuff. So suddenly, I'm not dealing with suddenly. I'm not dealing with Sarah Lee cakes or anything like that. So I had to go through that. I had to go through that in order to get an awakening, because while I was in this other program, a higher power was a sober sense of me. That was much better. A sober me was a higher power. At that point, that's what it was, but that was not enough to keep me sober. So trials and low spots came, a divorce, breaking up, not having my children all the time, all these things she was doing to me. It was me doing it to myself. But this was just stuff that was happening in my life. It wasn't happening to me. It was happening, and I was taking ownership of this stuff. So I got into this program. I heard a guy announce himself the same way that Mr. Houston did with that. I'm a grateful, recovered alcoholic, and I'm here to build character rather than comfort. And I was like, oh, that guy's got to be my sponsor. And I went over him and went over there and asked him, and he said no. But he said, I have a guy that's a fireball that can sponsor you. It's one of his sponsees. That grand sponsor is still in my life today. He still helps me out, but he had gone through, Don Pritz was the sponsor of his sponsor. And so through that lineage, which David's a part of that lineage as well, I had gotten this Mark Houston stuff that started to float into my sobriety. I became a big book thumper. I got into this, even before that. Let me step back just a little bit, because after 7 years of being in a 12-step program, I knew that I had a drinking problem, and I knew that I couldn't stop, and I kept trying to stop, and I could not stop it. I was drinking cinnamon whiskey out of a flask in my pocket because I had private investigators following me, because I'm going through this divorce and we're going through child custody stuff. And so I wasn't drinking at the bar. I was buying water at the bar, but I was drinking in the bathroom out of a flask and cinnamon whiskey. And I could not stop doing this. I wasn't doing hard liquor until then, until I had to hide it from people and hide it in plain view. And I got to a point where I was so bad that I could not stop. I couldn't even get out of the car at the 24-hour club here in Savannah. I was like, and I'd pull in all the time. I'd pull in, and the brake lights would flicker. They'd go on, they go off, they go on, go off, and I'd go right back. And somehow my car drove itself right to the drive-through of the liquor store. I don't know how that happened, but it would do that. So I checked myself into the recovery place here in Savannah, a place that I had already been to. It was a little bit embarrassing going back to a place that you had already gotten sober at, but they gave me 30 days in person or in-house, and about 3 days in, I got some food in my stomach. The alcohol had kind of gotten out. They gave me some Ativan and stuff. My skin cleared up, and I got sexy again. And I was like, check, please. Y'all have been fantastic, wonderful hosts and stuff. The beds were great. The food was great. Can you just bring my luggage to the front? Said, I'll just take the bill and I will be out of y'all's hair. And this guy took me by the shoulders and shook me and said, you're the only person in here that doesn't know that you're an alcoholic. You're the only person that doesn't know that. And right there in that moment, I had just the scales fell from my eyes, that I could see that the troubles weren't coming at me, they were coming from me. I saw all these situations that I thought was somebody else's fault, and it was my fault. It was every time that I put alcohol into my body, or the selfish and self-centeredness showed up, and there was the things that I was doing that was causing all these problems that I blamed everybody else for. I had this first step experience in all these scenes, and it all happened in a second while this guy's shaking me and letting me know that I'm the only person. And I could concede to myself, to my innermost self, for the first time, that I was alcoholic. That I was alcoholic. I didn't have to live under a bridge. I didn't have to drink out of a paper bag. I didn't have to have a trench coat or any of the cliche things that we think are alcoholic, which keeps us out of the rooms for so long. That alcoholics are normal people and different creeds and religions and all kinds of people. And it doesn't matter. It's this spiritual malady that when we put it in this allergy that we have to getting more. Once I put it in my body, that is the first one that's going to get me drunk, because I'm going to keep going after that and after that and after that, and I'm not going to stop until it stops. I'm driven by this thing. Once I put one of them into my body, and I'll think that I changed my mind. I was going to drink too, but I changed my mind. I'm going to stay till the bar closes. I'm going to stay a little bit longer, and I'll stagger out. I'm going to park badly at my thing. Maybe not even close my door. Maybe even take my clothes off all the way up the stairs and do some stuff like that. But I don't know what's going to happen once I start drinking. My mind always takes me back to the time that I had two and I drove home safely. I parked, perfectly in between the lines, leaving enough space for my neighbors and stuff like that. That's what my mind would take me back to. Not the times that I slept in the bushes because there were police outside the parking garage, and I'm outside the wrong parking garage anyway. I was parked in the parking garage over there. I didn't know, like, I never went back to that stuff where I was cut up by nobody fighting with me, but me only fighting with myself, falling into bushes, different things that, felt like it was just saying, like, I didn't know that I drank any differently than anybody else did because I only drank the way that I drank. The peculiar mental twist kept me from understanding that I had a peculiar mental twist because I didn't know how anybody else drank, how I drank. I thought that's what everybody else was feeling. I had no idea, but it just seemed like trouble just kind of was magnetized to me when I did drink, and it wasn't necessarily always police or anything like that. It was scrapes and dings and relationship woes and stuff like that, getting into fights with people, stuff that, just seemed like it's got to be their fault, obviously, but it was my drinking that I did not know. So, getting into that and finally having that first step experience, I understood for the first time, even after being in a 12-step program for 7 years, I did not know to my core that I was alcoholic, that I couldn't do this, that I couldn't put any of its cousins in my body either. And I was really on fire for this program. I wanted to get into this, and I'm getting in, got my sponsor and we go through the book and we're reading, doing all this stuff. And I get stuck kind of on two and my grand sponsor's like, what's the problem going on? I said, I can't figure out what my concept of God is. And he said that if you were smart enough to figure out what God was, you wouldn't be sitting in the front row of Alcoholics Anonymous with me. He said, why don't you start to have a relationship with that power? And he said, and from there, you can start to build a concept that might start to show up in your life. This is going to be a God of your misunderstanding. If you're smart enough to understand, you would not be right here with me. I went in and that got me past step 2. I did step 3, with my grand sponsor, my sponsor, and we held hands. And I don't normally kneel on the floor and hold hands with men, but I'm like, I like anything right now to get rid of this alcohol stuff because I need something that is bigger than me because I cannot go back to the way I was. So I had this feeling, I had this wonderful feeling doing this prayer with these men, and it didn't feel weird or anything. And I was like, I'm going to do this when I go to church tonight. There was a church program that I was at, and I was at the Baptist church on Whitmarsh Island on Wilmington Island. And so I went to that program and I waited till a certain time, and I'm going to say the third step prayer, and I'm going to close my eyes, and I close my eyes, and then this bright light starts to shine through my eyelids, and I can see it, and it's super bright. And I really want to open my eyes. I want to just crack my eyes and see where the light's coming from. So I don't. I finish the prayer, and all of a sudden the light's gone. And I'm kind of dumbfounded. I'm still listening to the Christmas music and stuff. It's nice, but I stay after and I start to look around to see where the spotlight was, because there's got to be a spotlight in there. They got to have some sort of lighting system and stuff. And I'm spreading the curtains behind up on the stage and stuff. And I'm looking up underneath to see if there's any lights on the upper deck there. And Pastor Brooks comes by and is like, is there something I can help you with, Julie? I was like, I had this thing with do you guys have a lighting system in here? That some sort of lighting that you guys use during the Christmas event? And he's like, no, like, it's nothing. So I get out of there, I call my grand sponsor, and I tell him what happened. I said that this light was coming through my eyes when I did the third step prayer. And he said, well, you know what? He goes, they were messing with you. And I was like, what? They were messing with me. He goes, I'm just kidding. That was some sort of spiritual experience. And he goes, I don't know what it is. I can't explain it. And neither should you try and explain it either. This is something you need to hold on to. And that wasn't something that struck me sober or anything like that. It wasn't the white light that all of a sudden now I'm good. I don't got to do any of those steps. But that got me further into step 4. I got into figuring out what these manifestations of self were that had defeated me. Understanding that self is what has defeated me, is everything that I relate to myself, and getting into this writing, just writing a list. I'd already gotten the first 2 columns written. All of us do. It's who did it and what they did, but instead of making a spiritual structure out of that, I make them into crutches and I walk around to show everybody how hurt I am. You know, I just want to show you that I'm hurt. You can feel sorry for me. I'll pour you. Where's Jimmy? Look how hurt he is. Somebody did something, and this is what they did. Somebody did something. And I can get through the first two columns. First two columns are easy. When I start to get into the 7 areas of self, when I start to understand what it's affecting, whether it's my pocketbook, my sex relations, my personal relations, and I start to get down to causes and conditions, I start to uncover, discover, and discard. And I can start to disregard the other person entirely. Disregard the other person entirely. I hear people saying my part. No, well, that wasn't my part, because if it's my part, I'm taking the smallest part if it's a bad thing. And if it's a good thing, I'm taking the biggest part. But it's disregard the other person entirely. Where had I been at fault? Where had I mean, that's pretty bad. And then you got 4 columns that I got to go into, these 4 dressing rooms that all my character defects come out of. They may come out as entitlement or something else like that, or anger. Fear always comes out as anger. I mean, you know, especially when it goes out in public, it's always dressed and drag a little bit different. But all from those columns, I start to understand, and I see the patterns in my life. I see that these things had come up, you know, and then I bracket fear in some of this stuff. So I start to see this false evidence appearing real, that these things that aren't even happening, this narrative in my head that I keep telling myself. And it's not thoughts that ruin my day, it's the belief in those thoughts. And when I believe those things to a certain degree, it makes them real. If you see the boogeyman, run at the boogeyman, he'll run away. It's these fears that aren't even real, but I make them to be real, you know, and getting through that fear column, you know, and this is not a thing that you just get through, you know, that 1/4 step and I'm done. The spiritual sculptor starts, you know, you got to take out the big chunks. The sculptor starts with these big chisels and hammers and stuff. Then he gets down to polishing and buffing. And that's what starts to happen with my life and my true self, these things, these ideas and stuff that I have to get rid of, these lifelong conceptions that got to be thrown out the window, because I don't even know, you know, any of the ideas that I have. I don't know where they came from. Everything that I learned, I was taught. And somebody else was taught that thing too. I didn't know that I was born until somebody told me. And still to this day, I mean, I wasn't there. I wasn't really conscious. So they still could be telling me a story. But everybody to that point, from when you're being born, when you've been born, you've been taught everything that you know. And some of those ideas I took as fact. I never explored any of those things. I never understood, do I even believe that? You know, this set aside prayer always gets us to the point where we can start to look at that stuff. When we get into We Aggies, we start looking at these different things. You know, was I intolerant? Well, intolerant while being intolerant myself. Well, of course I'm intolerant of people because they're intolerable, you know, and I can't do that. You know, our book tells us there is a solution, and I have a problem with Bill because it took him 59 pages to get to it. I'm like, come on, Willie Griffith Wilson, you know, you could have done this, you could have put this up front, but you give me all these stuff before. It says in here, almost none of us like the soul searching and leveling of our, almost none of us. I don't think any of us like that, Bill. You told us almost none of us. Like, there's a couple of people who are like, yeah, let me tell all my bad stuff. Let me turn the mirror on myself for a little bit. This is going to be great. I don't point me to those people. You know, I'd been running my life trying to work with third dimensional solutions for fourth dimensional problems for the whole time, and not knowing that this was a spiritual thing. I had a spiritual malady. When the spiritual malady is overcome, I straighten out mentally and physically. I did not know that. I kept thinking a new job, you know, more money, a different girlfriend. These things would solve my issues. If maybe I had a different wardrobe. And that was what kept me out when I was in the first 7 years. You know, I didn't have this God consciousness. You know, I was so selfish, and still it was just me doing my thing. I could share good. I gave good share, and I was really good at that. And they taught me how to share real good in this other thing. It was fun. I gave people worksheets. It was just busy work. Just, you know, I'd go into the hood and pull crackheads out. Mr. Chucky, Willie, Booker T, these people that had a bigger problem than me. When you took the drugs out of my system, I was just fine. Like, okay, I'm good now. And now you gave me something to do, somebody to help, some meetings to go to, and I got a little bit too sober for myself. And I was doing it on my own. And actually, I was fooling myself. Who better to pull the world over my eyes than myself, because I've been doing it for my whole life. Deep down on every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God, but it's always that pomp, calamity, that shiny, that curvy, that we always put in front of that stuff. God, yeah, you can take the alcohol, but, stay out of my love life, stay out of my job, my occupation, my cars, and the other stuff. Just it'd be over here in AA for an hour so that I can throw 3 minutes together and I can wrap it up in a bow and I can go sleep with my mistress, kick my dog, and then cheat on my taxes. That's what I thought that this thing was, that I could go through this. But our job in here is that I can only sweep the ground a bit. I can only clear the ground a bit. That's all I'm trying to do for y'all right now is clear the ground a bit. If my testimony helps you sweep away prejudice, helps you think honestly, encourages you to search diligently within yourself, then you can join me and the rest of us on this broad highway with this attitude you cannot fail, consciousness of your belief. And I don't need belief in God anymore. I don't need to believe that God, because I know God. I have God in my heart now. I have come to know God. Like I said, we had the CCDs in here that, or as I call them, I have little acronyms and I have words for this, and I tell everybody that's what the young kids are calling it. We Aggies is we agnostics, the BDZs is the bedevilments, the CCDs, the clear-cut set of directions. But yeah, we go through this book and we've got steps, we've got things to do. The book is pretty plain and simple. I can't get stuck on the black words, and I can't keep throwing black words at you. I have to throw a little bit of heart with this. The first prayer that comes in the book is we ask his protection with complete care and, or we ask his protection with care and complete abandon. So I need to abandon myself, that how I take things personally to him. Can I trust God? The verdict of the ages is that men and women of faith have courage. They trust their God. What does trust look like? That's a trust fall. Whatever you're putting in front of me, God wants for me. I may not think it looks like Jimmy's will, and I always get messed up, and then I think that, maybe God screwed up and he needs a little bit of my help to fix this thing. And I get in there, the more I stir it up, the more mixed up it gets. Nothing's ever going to heal if I keep picking at it. But I think, I cannot, if I can put my absolute trust in God, what does that look like? Dropping my shoulders down. God's just back there. Go out and play, boy. You got this. You got this. I got you, kid. Just go out there and do your thing. He goes, I'm not going to steer you wrong. I have your good intent. I gave up my subscription to Veil of Tears magazine a long ago. I had 2 subscriptions to Veil of Tears magazine. I had one in the front room and then one in the restroom. And, but God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. That's what he wants for us. It is our natural state, but I'm always too worried about what I don't have or what I used to have, and tripping over things behind me and worried about the things that haven't even happened yet. And I miss the present moment. We get in here. I had this thing with, I don't know if y'all had to do this with your sponsor, but they're like, you got to read your 5th step with multiple people. It says person or persons in the book. I'm like, person or persons. So I did a poll. I went around to the different meetings. I was like, how many people did you have to read your 5th step to? And they're like, just one, just my sponsor. So, I'm coming back with this evidence. I'm like, I've only got to read this thing one time. And they're like, not if you want to do it with us. So the thing that I had to do is read with person or person. So I got to read with about 4 different people. And, I got into the program, did the steps really, really quickly, got into this, read, and then about 90 days in, got me an AA girlfriend. She was, she went out. She's sober. And she was just, gosh, I could not stop looking at her. I hated when she opened her mouth. She did not, I just really didn't like her, but she was so pretty, and I thought this, and that went on for like a month, and then she cheated on me. And I asked some people, and they're like, did you know that was going to happen? Oh yeah, she bounced around the room and stuff. And they're like, you didn't think to tell me that? They're like, no, we figured you'd have a good time for a little bit and then you'd be fine. And my grant sponsor said, no, it's a proper time to go through the steps the real way. So he took me through, we did a very thorough sex inventory, and we started to see where I was selfish and self-centered, where I instilled jealousy, bitterness, where I was only thinking about myself, even though it was just a little bit, unjustifiably aroused jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness. What could I have done instead? I subjected each relationship to the test. But selfish or not, I mean, most of them were selfish. It was just, I had a pretty girl at AA that was on my, I have arrived. I have arrived, y'all, in AA as well. David knows my old girlfriend, my old girlfriend that I had a little bit. David liked her too. He thought she was pretty. And he gave me this thing that was a sex ideal, a sane and sex ideal. No, when I did it with my other sponsor, he gave it as a shopping list, and it was like, okay, so I want blue eyes, I want brown hair. These are the curves that I need. I need her to, be about this tall. This is the kind of car I'd like to drive. He gave me an ideal that I needed to live up to. He gave me things that I needed to do in order to attract the person that I wanted to be with. And it was there that I started to grow in relationships, where I started to have relationships with and have friends that were women, and not just, it wasn't another person, another conquest or anything like that. So yeah, after this AA girlfriend went through this, I got to go through the steps again. 6 and 7, a lot of people are like, oh, I need to find out what my character defects are and do the opposite of it. It's got 7 questions in here. And my friend was talking to me about the other day, at the end of returning home, take the book down from the shelf, reading the first 5 proposals. Had we admitted anything? Were we building an arch through which we could walk through a free man? Is our work solid so far? The stones properly in place? Have we skimped on the cement put into the foundation? Have we tried to make mortar without sand? And then it's like, if we can answer this to our satisfaction, then we look at 6, and then it emphasizes the willingness is indispensable. Am I now willing to let God remove from us the things that which we had admitted had been objectionable? Can he take them all now, every one? That's 7 questions that we get to, so I've got to be willing. And then it's not even up to me. I say the 7th step prayer, which the amen is after the 3rd step prayer. And God takes away what he decides is not useful. It's not me doing this stuff. I start to understand this. I can't sit in my own house and get rid of my character defects. I got to go out into the world because they're going to show up. They're going to show up through other people. These things that annoy me is just another person being a mirror to me. And I started to see that. 8 and 9 now. The list, we'd already written the list, right? In 4, there are a couple other people that I had to put on there: money, crime, other people, domestic, and these things. And the whole thing is, I have to get rid of self. Self is my problem through this whole thing. So despite the personal consequences, take away the personal consequences. Am I willing to do all this stuff? Am I willing to make these things right? And I was willing to make these things right. I had the willingness in 6. I had the willingness to go to these people when I had the willingness to do these things despite the personal consequences, because really at this point, my life is no longer my business. This is about God. I have to get to that point. And when I got to that point, I could get into 9. I started making these amends, and somebody said to me, like, how about your financial amends? How you doing on them? I'm like, oh, God dang, I don't pay the money back. Do anything but pay the money back. So I had to pay some of the money back. And when we get into, this tells us about the 9 step promises. This is a description of being in the spirit world. Who doesn't want to be in the spirit world? But nobody just tells us how we get to the spirit world. They tell us a little bit later. It's easy to let up on this spiritual program, but that's the only place in the book that says it's easy. It's a day by day. It's 24 hours at a time. But the spirit world looks like, if we're painstaking about this phase of our development, we'll be amazed before we're halfway through. We're going to know a new freedom and new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We'll comprehend the word serenity. We will know peace. That's being in the spirit world, to know peace and serenity and not senility. I thought I'd get to senility before I got to serenity, but serenity has come. Peace has come over me. No matter how far down the scale I've gone, no matter what I had done, any of the stuff that I had done before, that stuff was all behind me. I had been reborn in step 3. I had a new life. I didn't want my old life back. We'll see how our experience could benefit others. The feeling of uselessness, self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things in the self, and it's going to slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and economic insecurity, Not that you're not going to be a little bit insecure about money and stuff, but the fear of it is going to start to leave you. You will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. This is a description of the spirit world. In step 10, we continue to take personal inventory. A lot of people say this is 4 through 9. I do not say it's 4 through 9. I don't say that. I say step 10 is step 10. Because we get into this and we're in the spirit world now. We continue to grow in understanding that effectiveness is not an overnight matter. This is something we do every day. This kind of is a guide for how we get through the day. This is when the world rubs up against me. Can I get into this thing? Can I look for these 4 little things? It's actually from the Oxford group, the absolute love, absolute purity. You turn those upside down, and then it's selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. Bill figured out a way to sell the Oxford group to us by turning it upside down, doing the opposite, because it was a little bit too nice and pretty for alcoholics. But when we do it that way, when I start to look for those things, and not as it manifests in the world, as it manifests through my thinking, because I want my thinking to be on a much higher plane. When these thoughts go through my head and I see it selfish, dishonest, resentful, or fearful, I can ask God to remove it at once. I can go tell on it. I can tell somebody about it. I can get it out of my mouth. When I say it out loud, it loses its power. It gets out of there. This is what I call Step 10 2.0. But I think this is where we're going with this. We ask God to remove them at once. We discuss them with somebody immediately. It doesn't say get advice, because none of us got a diploma that says we're a psychiatrist or a couch for anybody to lay on a legal pad to write down things on. But a lot of us think that we can give advice. Then we make amends quickly. Make amends quickly. It didn't tell me to approach anybody like it did in 9. It tells me to make amends to my thinking. The neurons that fire together, wire together. When I start changing my thinking, I start to get these new neural pathways. I start to get a super highway that God has. And then I change my thoughts. It even says in here, thoughts. I turn my thoughts to somebody I can help. So I take a bad thought to a good thought. I change that up, because in your brain, you can't just drop a thought. I just can't push it away, because whatever I resist persists. I cease fighting anyone or anything, even other alcoholics or even alcohol. This is where we get to be put in a place of neutrality. It's neither good nor it's bad. I'm just placed there, safe and protected, unaffected. This is the 10-step promises. They are much better than the 9-step promises. But this is where that catch-22 is. It's easy. It's easy. We like easy. It's easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. Because if we let up on this thing, if you're coasting, you're only going downhill. It's the only place in the book that says it's easy. It says it's simple, but not easy. But if we stop doing this thing, thy will be done. Thy will is being done right now. It's not thy will be done in the future. I can practice, I can exercise my willpower along this line as the proper use of the will. We talk about this 6th sense that starts to come back in, this proper attitude. We have step 11 that is really just repeating step 10. And it starts at night. So maybe I was doing 10 all day, and I get to night, I get the nightly review, and ask me those 4 questions. Resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid. Wait a second, that sounds like step 10 there. So did any of that stuff get through the trap? Did it get through the trap, and can I catch it in 11 at night? Do I owe an apology? Have I kept something to somebody that I should have discussed? Was I kind and loving to all? I'm pretty sure I'm kind and loving to all, especially myself. But no, I start to do this. What could I have done better? I start to do things better. I start to understand that. And when I start to do this every day and I start to grow in this thing, I start to understand where I'm doing things poorly, or where I keep catching things in selfish, dishonest, resentment, or fear. And it tells us not to drift into worry, remorse. This is a constructive inventory. This is not destructive. We have a long road of deconstruction ahead, and it's mostly my old ideas. We had several lifelong conceptions we had to throw out the window because I believe things that aren't even real. On Awakening gives us this thing in the morning, and maybe it's not on Awakening, it's when I wake back up because I fell asleep and was sleepwalking, dreaming that I was awake through the world, through just living each day. If nothing changes, nothing changes. I need to be in the now. On Awakening tells us that we think about the 24 hours ahead. We ask God to direct our thinking, especially be divorced from self-pity, the past, dishonesty, delusion right now that I think things are going my way, or self-seeking it is that stuff in the future. It tells us to be right here, right now. Can God help me to do this? If I go to the boardroom, I ran this company for a long time and I ran it into the ground, and I still think I run the company every once in a while. I still think that I run the company, and I won't go into the meeting with the boss, and I got to go in and see what the boss wants to do with the company now. He's taking it over. It wasn't really a hostile takeover. I kind of gave it to him, but I still want to take the company back. I think that I have controlling interest in the company just because my name's on the thing, but God's in charge now. I got a new director. I'm just an agent for him. Here we ask God for inspiration, an intuitive thought, or a decision. We relax and take it easy. Do y'all ever do those Chinese finger traps? That they used to have where you put your finger on both sides and it was kind of woven. And the more you struggled, the tighter it got, and you couldn't get your finger. But when you relaxed and you took it easy, your fingers would just slide right out of that thing. When you were little, you'd panic and you have your mom or your dad cut that thing off to get it off. But if you relax and take it easy, this is what we do. We're surprised how the right answers come after we have tried this for a while. It's so good. Can I take a breath? Can you take a breath? My grand sponsor first, he gave me 10 and 11 in a short little thing, and it was pause, watch, turn. Pause, watch, turn. He goes, do you ever breathe? And I said, I'm always breathing. I don't know what you're talking about breathing. You don't understand what my ex-wife is doing, and she did this thing with the kids, and the lawyer's doing the thing, and he's like, okay. So before we do anything, we take a pause. We take a breath before you buy something, before you call somebody, before you send a text and email. Take a deep breath and pause. Watch to see if there's any selfish resentment, dishonesty, or fear in any of that stuff. He said, and then turn it over to God. He said, turn, it over, turn it to somebody that can help you, turn over to somebody that you can help. And he said, and if it's too much for you, turn your tiny little rear end around and go the other way, Jimmy. So I had to understand that, and it was, all this stuff just gets us to a point where we can start working with other people. Faith without works is dead, and faith and works without faith is just self-propulsion. I don't want to be in self-propulsion anymore. It didn't get me anywhere. We get to the 12th step, and it is a promise, a charge, and a challenge. It gives me this thing where it promises me after these 12 steps that I'll have a spiritual awakening. And then it charges me, this for the work that the other people have done for me, to carry the message to other people, to try and carry the message to other people. That's the charge that I have. And the challenge is to practice these principles in all of my affairs. That is the challenge, and that's a challenge for all of us. This is not about going to meetings and acting right and doing right. This is about our homes, occupations, and affairs. The HOA is not the homeowners association. I don't care what color you paint your door or anything like that. If your trash cans get left out or any of that stuff. This is about, can I take this stuff to work? Can I take this stuff to my home? Can I start acting right in my house, around my kids? Can I start being a beacon? Can I take the lead, as it says in step 6? Can I start showing them rather than telling them, talking incessantly about spiritual things? Can I show them how to be a spiritual person? And that's what 12 does for me. Working with other people, you cannot even get it unless you give it away. It's working with others at first they use our selfishness against us. They're like, the best way to get rid of alcohol is work with another alcoholic. The best way to get, and I'm like, it's on me. I got to get this thing off me. I got to go work with another alcoholic. And it works pretty good. So I do that for a while. And then I start to understand, like, well, this thing's working. And now it's kind of like enlightened self-interest, like they get something, I get something. And, I'm going through the book. I'm learning more as I'm doing this stuff. And I'm getting people, I'm starting to see lights come on in other people's eyes. Not everybody's getting sober, but yeah, I'm still sober. Like the scorecard only has to register one. And then it can finally get to, they give us altruism really early in the book. Altruism don't come right in the first year. It doesn't come in the first sponsee. A lot of people I don't even want to sponsor people, that's for other people. But you can't get it until you start helping other people. The foundation of this thing is working with other people. It was Evie working with Bill as Ballin Hazard came to him and got him the first court card to get him out of jail, working with another alcoholic and Bill worked with alcoholics, and he was the one who stayed sober until he got to Akron and started to work with Dr. Bob. And from that little synergy, that catalyst that had blown up right there, they understood that knowing about alcoholism, and that only an alcoholic could work with another alcoholic, because we know exactly how we think. The peculiar mental twist that I told you that kept me from understanding that I had a peculiar mental twist. These other people understand that. When I talk to Al Vegas on here, and I'm like, has he been reading my diary? No, it's because we've been taken over by the same thing, this parasite of self, this selfish and self-centeredness. He's not been reading my diary. I thought maybe somebody had been when I started reading this book, but we suffer from this thing that only we know about. And when we talk to normies about it, they think we're crazy. We talk about these crazy things and laugh about them, and they don't think it's very funny. But because we've destroyed other people's lives, and we did it pretty bad, and that looks like it is my time. Yes, if you are not in the book, if you are in a 12-step program and you're not doing the 12 steps, I'd ask you to get into the 12 steps, maybe get into this book, start working with other people. It is the foundation stone of our program. If you want to get into this thing, if you want a new life, if you want to be enthusiastic about your sobriety, because nobody else is going to be, so you may as well be yourself. So get in here, trust God, and clean house, and help others. So love you all.